Good day, children. In the previous two sessions, we read about the nature of Rattrap peddler, about Crofter, and the way he showed his hospitality towards peddler, and the way Rattrap seller had stolen 30 crore notes from his leather pouch and took the forest path to avoid being noticed, and how he was stuck in the forest and couldn't get the way out. After hearing hammer strokes, he started moving towards the direction of the sound. Now, where did he reach? Let's see. Coming to the next paragraph. The Ramsajo iron works, which are now closed down, were not so long ago a large plant with smelter, rolling mill, and forge. So he reached Ramsajo iron works, which is now closed, but earlier, long time ago, it was a large plant with smelter. Smelter means the machines which melts the iron. Rolling mill, the machines used to shape the iron into flat sheets or rolling sheets. And forge is a area with fire, furnace. In the summertime, long lines of heavily loaded barges and scows slid down the canal, which led to a large inland lake, and in the winter time, the roads near the mill were black from all the coal dust which sifted down from the big charcoal crates. Now, during summertime, long lines of heavily loaded barges and scows, these are big and small flat bottomed boats, or you can say ships, flat bottom ships which are used to carry material to the iron mill. So these ships used to carry the material to the mill through the canal to the lake, which was joined to the lake. And in winter season, the roads near the mill, they were black with the coal dust. Now, black with the coal dust which sifted means which was coming. Why the dust was on the road? Because it was coming out from the big baskets which were full of charcoal. During one of the long dark evenings, just before Christmas, the master smith and his helper sat in the dark forge near the furnace, waiting for the pig iron. Pig iron is raw iron, which had been put in the fire to be ready to put on the anvil. Every now and then, one of them got up to stir the glowing mass with a long iron bar, returning in a few moments, dripping with perspiration, though, as was the custom, he wore nothing but a long shirt and a pair of wooden shoes. Now, what did he see there? Master Smith and his helper both were working near the fireplace. Furnace is the fireplace, and they were stirring the pig iron, stirring with the iron rod, and then one by one, because they were working near the hot fire, so one by one, blacksmith and the second time the helper was going near the fire to stir the pig iron, and when they were returning, they were totally sweating, dripping with perspiration means they were sweating. And it was a custom, they were wearing long shirt and a pair of wooden shoes. Now they were stirring the iron because they wanted to get ready to put it on an anvil. Now anvil is a iron stand. You might have seen cobblers using the iron stand. Cobblers using the iron stand when they mend your shoes. They put your shoes on that anvil and repair it. In the same way, they want that pig iron to be ready to put it on the anvil so that they can give shape to that iron. Next paragraph. All the time there were many sounds to be heard in the forge. The big bellows groaned and the burning coal cracked. The fireboy shoveled charcoal into the maw of the furnace with a great deal of clatter. Outside roared the waterfall, and a sharp north wind whipped the rain against the brick tiled roof. Now, so many sounds were heard in the forge in that area. Now, what type of sounds? big bellows groaning sound of the bellows. Now, groaning sound coming out from the pipe which is used to blow air, and then burning charcoal cracking sound of the charcoal. Then the fire boy shoveled charcoal into the maw of the furnace. Maw of the furnace means the opening space from which charcoal is put in the fire with a great deal of clatter. And then when the charcoal is put in the fire, it makes a clattering sound. Outside roared the waterfall. Because it was raining outside, so one can hear the sound of waterfall. And a sharp north wind whipped the rain against the brick tiled roof. So it was raining outside and the wind was also blowing. So when the wind hits the rain, we can hear a whipping sound on the roof, on the tiled roof. So, whipped sound of the rain can be heard on the tiled roof. Next, it was probably on account of all this noise that the blacksmith did not notice that a man had opened the gate and entered the forge until he stood close up to the furnace. So, two persons were working there, one blacksmith and the second his helper. Both of them working, they didn't notice that a person has opened their gate and they have entered until until that rat trap seller came closer to the furnace, to that fireplace. Surely it was nothing unusual for poor vagabonds without any better shelter for the night to be attracted to the forge by the glow of light which escaped through the sooty panes and to come in to warm themselves in front of the fire. So the rat trap seller, he had just noticed the light which was coming out from the window panes, and the window panes were also totally black with the dust of the charcoal. Still then, from little bit part, he has seen the light, and that light has attracted rat trap seller to enter the forge to warm himself because it was raining outside. So his clothes were totally wet. He wanted to warm and spend the night. Coming to the next, the blacksmiths glanced only casually and indifferently at the intruder. Intruder is a person who enters somebody's house or some place without permission. So the blacksmiths glanced only, they looked at him casually as if they have not noticed. He looked the way people of his type usually did, with a long beard, dirty ragged, and with a bunch of rat traps dangling on his chest. And the rat trap seller was having long beard, looks very dirty, wearing the ragged, worn out clothes, and with a bunch of rat traps, lot of rat traps which were hanging on his chest because he used to sell the rat traps. That's why so many rat traps were hanging on his chest. He asked permission to stay, and the master blacksmith nodded a haughty consent without honoring him with a single word. Now, rat trap seller took permission, and Master Smith, without uttering a word, he just nodded his head proudly. Haughty consent means given permission very proudly by just nodding his head, moving his head. The tramp did not say anything either. He had not come there to talk but only to warm himself and sleep. In those days, the Ramsajo iron mill was owned by a very prominent ironmaster whose greatest ambition was to ship out good iron to the market. He watched both night and day to see that the work was done as well as possible, and at this very moment he came into the forge on one of his nightly rounds of inspection. So the iron mill was owned, the owner was a very famous ironmaster whose ambition was to ship out, means to export good quality of iron to the market. So he used to come during daytime as well as nighttime just to see whether the people are working properly or not. So right at this time he was on the nightly round of inspection. Now take care that one we have talked about blacksmith or ironsmith, and second is iron master. So these are two different people. Ironsmith is the person who was working there, and iron master is the owner of that mill. Coming to the next paragraph. Naturally, the first thing he saw was a tall. Now, first thing he saw, he refers to the iron master who has come on the nightly round. Naturally, the first thing he saw was the tall ragamuffin who had eased his way to close to the so close to the furnace that steam rose from his wet rags. The ironmaster did not follow the example of the blacksmiths, who had hardly deigned means hardly bothered to look at the stranger. He walked close up to him, looked him over very carefully, then tore off his slouch hat to get a better view of his face. Now, Ironmaster, when he entered the forge, he saw that a tall ragamuffin means the person who was wearing rags. He was there feeling comfortable, sitting so close to the furnace, and steam was coming out of his wet clothes because it was raining outside. His clothes were wet, so and he was sitting so close to the fire that steam was coming out from his wet clothes. The ironmaster didn't follow the same pattern which was followed by the those two blacksmiths, because they hardly bothered that somebody has entered their forge or not. But Ironmaster went close to that person. He removed his slouch hat. Slouch means his hat was a little bit bending from the front side. So he removed his slouch hat to give a better view of his to get a better view of his face. Now, as he saw him, what was his response? Let's see. But of course, it is you, Niels Olof, he said. How you do look. So, what was his response? As if he already knew the rat trap seller. The man with the rat traps had never before seen the ironmaster at Ramsajo and did not even know what his name was. But it occurred to him that if the fine gentleman thought he was an old acquaintance, he might perhaps throw him a couple of kronor. Therefore, he did not want to undeceive him all at once. Now, Ironmaster mistook him that he knew Rattrap seller, but Rattrap seller had seen him for the first time. So Rattrap seller thought that if this person feels that he knew me, then it would be better to remain quiet and not to say anything, because he is a very good person and he can throw me some kronors. It means he can give me few couple of kronors. Next, yes, God knows things have gone downhill with me, he said. Now, this is the answer given by the rat trap seller, that things have gone downhill. It was my bad luck or misfortune that I have come to this state. I have to sell rat traps. You should not have resigned from the regiment, said the ironmaster. Now the regiment shows that both that the person ironmaster used to work in army some years ago. So you should not have resigned from the regiment, said the ironmaster. That was a mistake. If only I had still been in the service at the time, it never would have happened. Well, now, of course, you will come home with me. Now, Ironmaster said that it was your mistake that you have resigned from the regiment, from the army. So, if I would have been there, I would not have I have changed your thought and you would not have resigned at that time. So Ironmaster said, come to my home. So Ironmaster invited Rattrap seller to his home, thinking that he knows Rattrap seller. To go along up to the manor house means to the farmhouse, and be received by the owner like an old regimental comrade. Comrade here means colleague. That, however, did not please the tramp. Now, as the ironmaster invited the tramp word is used for the rat trap seller, wanderer, vagabond, all these are the words used for the rat trap seller. So, rat trap seller was not happy with that invitation. Now, why he was not happy? Let's see. No, I couldn't think of it, he said, looking quite alarmed. Rattrap seller was quite frightened. He said, no, I don't think I should go to your house. He thought of the 30 kroner. To go up to the manor house would be like throwing himself voluntarily into the lion's den. He only wanted a chance to sleep here in the forge and then sneak away as inconspicuously as possible. So he said, no, I can't come to your house, because he thought of those 30 kronors which he had stolen from the crofter's house, and those 30 kronors are still in his pocket. So he thought that if he will go to his house, to his farmhouse, it would be like risking his life, as if he is voluntarily going into the lion's den. So he only wanted a chance to sleep there and then sneak away. Sneak away means go or run silently out of that place without being noticed. Inconspicuously as possible means without being noticed. In the morning he will run away without telling anybody. He will leave that place. The ironmaster assumed that he felt embarrassed because of his miserable clothing. Please don't think that I have such a fine home that you cannot show yourself there, he said. Elizabeth is dead. Elizabeth, his wife, is dead. As you may already have heard, my boys are abroad, as there is no one at home except my oldest daughter and myself. We were just saying that it was too bad we didn't have any company for Christmas. Now come along with me and help us make the Christmas food disappear a little faster. So Ironmaster thought that he's wearing rags. That's why he's feeling embarrassed to come to my house. So he tried to convince him. He said that my house is not that much big that you cannot come. There's nobody is at my house. Nobody is there at my house. My wife is dead. My boys means my sons are abroad, and only my oldest daughter is there. So we two members are there in the house, my daughter and myself. So you just come. Even we were thinking that nobody is there with us to celebrate Christmas, so we will get a company with you for celebration of Christmas. And then he said, let us make the Christmas food disappear a little faster. We will enjoy the Christmas food all together. But the stranger said no and no and again no, and the ironmaster saw that he must give in. But stranger answer was always no. So the ironmaster thought that he should stop inviting him now. So it looks as though Captain Von Stale preferred to stay with you tonight, Storm, he said to the master blacksmith and turned to his heel. Now, Ironmaster told to his blacksmith who was working there, and blacksmith name is Storm. He said, Storm, I think the Captain Von Stale, he referred to Captain Von Stale, for he had given this name to Rattrap seller, that Captain Von Stale wanted to stay with you instead of coming to my house. So he turned on his heel, turned back and started towards his house. But he laughed to himself as he went away, and the blacksmith, who knew him, understood very well that he had not said his last word. And the blacksmith thought, today my master has not told me the last words which he used to tell whenever he comes on the nightly round. Next paragraph. It was not more than half an hour before they heard the sound of carriage wheels outside the forge, and a new guest came in. But this time it was not the ironmaster. He had sent his daughter, apparently hoping that she would have better powers of persuasion than he himself. Now, just within half an hour, on the carriage wheels, ironmaster's daughter came in the forge, and thinking that my daughter has good convincing power, ironmaster has sent his daughter to invite Rattrap seller to his house. She entered, followed by a valet. Now the girl entered, ironmaster's daughter entered, followed by a valet. Servant, his servant or attendant was along with her, carrying on his arm a big fur coat. She was not at all pretty, but seemed modest. She was quite modest, gentle, and quite shy. In the forge, everything was just as it had been earlier in the evening. The master blacksmith and his apprentice still sat on their bench, and iron and charcoal still glowed in the furnace. The stranger had stretched himself out on the floor and lay with a piece of pig iron under his head and his hat pulled down over his eyes. So, as the girl came, everything was as before, but the rat trap seller was on the floor, stretched himself out on the floor. He was lying on the floor with a piece of with the iron piece. Pig iron means raw iron, putting under the head as a pillow, and then he had covered his head with the hat. As soon as the young girl, caught sight of him, she went up and lifted his hat. The girl removed his hat. The man was evidently used to sleeping with one eye open. He jumped up abruptly and seemed to be quite frightened. So, as she removed the hat, the person was sleeping with one eye open, and all of a sudden, if we will remove somebody's hat, the person will be frightened. So, all of a sudden, he jumped and seemed as if he is frightened. Thank you, and next we will cover in the next video. Thank you.